Good afternoon, everybody. Joe from NDB Aviation, and today I want to talk to you about the State of Flight Simulation, November 2024. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about the three major sims. Sorry, still no love for Prepare 3D. I know that it's still going strong. It's still out there as an option, but it will not be discussed in this video. Now, a few things to talk about before we get into this video and to break down Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, and X-Plane 12. Let's talk about frames per second like I did in the last State of Flight simulation almost 2 years ago, and talk about what you need to be looking for minimum specs and your minimum frames per second. Now, minimum specs, each simulator has a recommended settings. We're going to have Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, 2024, and then X-Plane 12. Now, take a look at those. Maybe even if you need to pause the video right now, because if you're building a PC, if you have an older PC, do keep in mind what you're working with and then what you might be able to expect. Because if you're below the recommended, or even if you're not sure if you have the recommended specs, you can list them in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you and give you an idea if those are at the minimum in the recommended or above the recommended, and get closer to the ideal specs. Leave that down there and I'll try to help you out as best I can. But your goal with this is, by hitting these specifications, you're able to run 30 frames per second minimum. Now, 30 frames per second is barely enough, in my opinion. Now, if you're doing 30 frames per second, say around New York City, flying out of LaGuardia, or you're flying out of SFO and you're doing a tour of the bay, something like that, if you're hitting 30 frames per second without any hiccups, that's not a big deal. That's great. But your ideal frames per second, if you're really shooting for the best sim experience, you want 60 frames per second. 60 frames per second is going to give you the best overall experience, the closest to real life and best realism sim experience that you can get. And we can talk further about that, but I know there are plenty of other channels that talk about how to maximize for that. And each sim is going to be slightly different about what they need to hit that target. Some sims, depending on what settings you give them, may never hit that target depending on where you are and what you're asking of your computer. So just keep that in mind, because there are some instances where you're just not going to hit 60 frames per second, depending on what your sliders are set to, and I mean sliders for visuals. So with that out of the way, at the end of this video, I'll talk about the videos that are coming soon after this one. I have several that I'm currently working on, and I will talk about those when we're all done with the State of Flight simulation. So for the purpose of this video, from this point moving forward, Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 will be known as 2020. Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 will be known as 2024. And X-Plane 12 will be known as either X-Plane 12 or just X-Plane. Now, it's going to be first 2020, 2024, and then X-Plane. So without further ado, let's get this rolling and start talking about each of the sims and where we are currently. Now, Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 is at its final stage of massive improvements and overall sim updates. They do have a sim update schedule moving forward, and there are still improvements coming to the sim. But there were a lot of things that were big improvements that are now being pushed to 2024. Some of those improvements will come backwards into 2020, but not a lot of them will. So keeping that in mind, 2020 is still a great buy. It's still a great sim experience. They have updated the physics, they have updated the computational fluid dynamics, and they have expanded the way the sim works to make it more realistic and more of almost a true simulator instead of just a gaming experience, which to me as a flight instructor, as a commercial pilot, that's a big deal. Other things that we've seen recently, aside from the regular interval sim updates, we have seen updates to the avionics. We've seen improvements to the Garmin suite and the touchscreen navigators and a lot of other things. And right now I even have one of the update list on my computer. And the overall thing that we've seen for the latest feedback snapshot from October 31st is we still have air traffic improvements for Sim Update 15, more improvements to the A320neo. There are more aircraft fixes. There are achievements coming in. The G3 Touch is being improved, and so on and so forth. I'll link the Dev Forum. That way you can see where the snapshot is and take a look for yourself to know what you're going to be seeing. Other things have been updated, though. We have better scenery. We have overall improvements to the GA aircraft, the transport category aircraft, and a simulator that now allows you to go from a departure to an arrival and be able to plug in a SID, do a cruise portion, go from cruise to your arrival and into an approach, and it links up properly almost 100% of the time. And I know there are issues on some of the aircraft and some of the ways that they come together, but right now, this is the best 2020 has ever been. And the closest thing I think 2020 will be to X-Plane 12 when it comes to realism and overall ability for a student pilot or a flight club or a flying school to utilize a sim for just overall ease of training and just knocking off rust or helping push a point instead of getting into a BATD or an AAT. Those are certified simulators for logging time, giving students or giving pilots something to practice. We're at that point where 2020 really is a mostly reliable sim for those purposes. As far as for gamers and just gaming tourists, it's a great thing to have. It also allows you to store a lot of things on your PC or your Xbox if that's something you like to do, like me, because I don't always trust having bandwidth. Even though I live in an area where I have really consistent and strong internet, my ISP is pretty good. If you're living somewhere that you don't have a lot of bandwidth or a lot of strong, consistent internet, 2020 is probably still going to be your better bet because it has less requirements when it comes to staying online. Given it does have a quote-unquote offline mode, you'll still need an internet connection to run Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. But as far as all my notes for 2020, yeah, we've seen the big updates. Some things from 2024, like scenery, are going to trickle backwards into 2020. But overall, 2024 is going to be where a lot of the improvements are going to go and stay. Some people will be able to make things for 2024 and then make them work with both simulators. However, some of the improvements, again, will only be available for 2024. So that being said, let's jump right into 2024. Now, 2024 is very interesting because hearing Jorg and Sebastian, Seb, and everybody else talk about what's going on with that sim, they're going to leverage something here called the thin client for a multitude of reasons. We're going to talk about the thin client towards the end of this discussion here and then roll into X-Plane 12 and you'll see the reason why. But, they talk about their users and the people that are using Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 and that will most likely be using 2024. And you have a population of pilots, you have a population of simmers, and they have a population of gaming tourists. And they're trying to appeal to those gaming tourists and the simmers and the pilots all at the same time. But bringing in this career mode is really important because the career mode offers a lot for people to do and a lot of things to pull them in and help them stay just right there. It also gives them a growing experience. So you can start off as a zero and grow up to be a hero with all your reputation, aircraft, certificates, or ratings that are not equivalent to real life ratings, but at least something to help people get an idea of what it's actually like. It's pretty cool. I'll give that to them. Now, with the career mode aside, if you are a flight school, a simmer that wants realism, or an actual pilot or a flying club, 2020 is going to offer some pretty cool things. It's going to offer within this career mode a lot of different missions that we've only tried to have in sims in the past, like the forest firefighting, the rescue missions, all kinds of things. The open world aspect is huge because they're making World 2.0. They've talked about this, how they're trying to make a copy of the actual world and have it in the sim. Now, what Microsoft's end goal with this is, I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do. It almost feels very Westworld-ish, but I think we're going to see in the future a lot of other intellectual properties coming out of this or utilizing this technology that Asobo and Microsoft are working with to create 2024. And this open world concept brings in a lot of cool things. With the career mode, with all the things that we're going to do, they had to improve the physics. Now, the physics that I'm intrigued by are the computational fluid dynamics. So meaning the world with wind, the world with the slipstream that comes around the aircraft, coming out of the engines, coming from the propeller, coming from helicopter blades, so on and so forth. Even the way that wind is affected by airfoils, the way the engine puts prop wash over a wing or over the entirety of the aircraft, all these things are being improved. And I know some people have been very questionable about these improvements and what it's going to be like, but I welcome it because I think 2020 is lacking. I want 2020 to be very much more similar to what X-Plane is because X-Plane does a better job with the way the winds and with ground effect and leaving ground effect, re-entering ground effect affect the aircraft versus 2020 does. And I'm hoping 2024 has found a way to fix all these things and make it more realistic. So the physics, wake turbulence, thermal activity, how microbursts affect an aircraft. All these things are coming to 2024. And even aside from that, you're going to be able to land on a grass strip that might have mud on it, and you'll get mud on your tires, and now that'll affect how your tires work. I'm intrigued to see if they're going to work out a way to have imbalance of mud and dirt application onto the tires, so then you feel that, because that happens in real life. I've had it happen before. It's a very interesting experience. And then you'll be able to affect crops, fields. You'll be able to affect snow on a field, because if you run your airplane over it, you're going to make indentions on all these things. And I think those are really cool aspects to bring more realism into the world of aviation and into 2024. The other cool thing they're going to add on to the career mode especially is going to be your reputation. If you damage an aircraft, it's going to come out of your pocket. Damage in general is cool, because if they really fine-tune this model, if you own an aircraft and you're hard on it all the time, if you shock cool the engine because you climbed up the altitude and then you brought it back all of a sudden to idle and you just decided to coast there for a while and stall it out, and then you create shock cooling damages or detonation damages because you leaned out the engine too much, all kinds of things that as a real pilot you need to know about. I think this is going to be amazing. And I think 2024 has great potential. The only catch about 2024 is going to come down to this thin client. And what will be on the PC, what will be on the Xbox, is really going to be what's going to make or break this for me as somebody that, again, a flight instructor, a commercial pilot, a commercial aviator. If everything that makes the sim work and makes it better to me is on the cloud, and I have to wait for bandwidth to get everything to work, I'm going to get frustrated, because I know we have the rolling cache, and I know we can up the size of the rolling cache, and that should help us out. But there's a catch-22 on this thin client idea. The thin client, with the games that use it and use it wholeheartedly, or the overall enterprise solutions that use thin clients, they allow you to put everything on the cloud, to take the overall resources and free them up on the user's PC and put the hard work onto the enterprise PC or whatever the main cloud is, and make it easier for the end user on the other end of the spectrum to run everything. But on Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, we still have recommended specs that are massive to get the most out of the sim. So we have a pseudo thin client that has some stuff on the cloud, and we have the base, very base portion of the sim on our PC. And my hope is this. My hope is the portion that's on the PC houses all the most important aspects of the sim, the flight model, the physics, the way everything works together. I'm hoping stays on the sim always. And I'm hoping what they'll do will be similar to what X-Plane 12 does and what 2020 does. Eventually, I hope they have like a master version or whatever you want to call what you'd be offering here. But I'm hoping eventually they'll offer a version of 2024 where you can choose and download whatever you want onto your PC and keep it there to lower your overall bandwidth needs. Because depending on what your ISP offers or what kind of speed you pay for, you might have different levels or varying levels of data caps that you will have to now contend with because of your 2024 needs. If you're flying in areas that require a high level of detail, the LOD, you are going to be using a lot of bandwidth up to maybe 180 megabits per second. And that's in the alpha. I'm intrigued to see what the final release candidate's going to get. I'm hoping it's going to be more around 100 megabits per second, but I don't know. I don't know where we are in the current process of making this run faster. I'm just happy to see that the servers are running faster than they have with 2020, even though 2020 required at most, and this is very rare, at most 50 megabits per second. We're looking at a 300+% growth in bandwidth requirements depending on what you're doing with 2024. And with the career mode, with all these special events, all these activities, these are all going to be part of the cloud, and you're going to have to stream and download them real quick before you do these. This is going to be a big deal. You are going to eat your data cap very fast with this. And I'm going to have a separate video talking about certain internet service providers, ISPs, and what their data caps are. If you are somebody that does not have good internet, or you struggle to have consistent internet, you're going to not want to get, at least for now, you may want to avoid 2024. If you've had 2020 and it's been working fine, that's great. Keep 2020 for now. Let others adopt 2024. And then when the time comes and you're satisfied with what you're seeing, then maybe adopt 2024 if you're somebody that's in this area where bandwidth and solid internet are an issue for you, especially data caps, because of your price point that maybe your ISP is at, you're paying for, because maybe you're saving money, which a lot of us are. So with that being said, let's transfer over now to the SIM that does not require an internet connection. You can buy X-Plane 12 on DVD. Now, due to the recent hurricanes, their supply chain has been disrupted, but they're saying that they are going to reinstate the shipment and sales of the DVD version of X-Plane 12, which gives you the opportunity to load this without being on the internet. However, if you want to update to the latest version of X-Plane 12, what are you going to need? An internet connection. If you want to update the scenery, which is nowhere near as good as the Microsoft Flight Sims, you're going to have to go to the internet to do all these things. So keep that in mind when you're trying to do things and update X-Plane 12. You still will have to get on the internet eventually, but it is your option if you have bad internet or questionable internet wherever you're living, or if you're a flight school or flight club and you're set up at a hangar somewhere that has no internet, X-Plane 12 is going to be for you. Now, X-Plane 12 has found itself being updated over its run so far, and the current updates are actually pretty nice. There are updates that have improved the physics, they have improved some of the systems, improved scenery, and the way everything loads. The current update on the X-Plane 12 blog, and this will be linked in the comments section or the description section, it was back on the 13th, unfortunately, of October, but they are finding ways to work with better dark cockpits, the way the lighting works, ATC weather, terrain and objects. They're having dual docking jetway support being brought in. The world editor, which is something that you can use as the end user, just like Plane Maker, to make your aircraft better or change them slightly to fly more realistic to the one you actually fly, because not every airplane flies the same versus the stock GA 172 in any of these sims. There are all kinds of updates that are coming. They're even trying to make X-Plane 12 load faster and use resources faster by the way that it's all coded to make it more competitive with Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. There will even be a web store built into the sim eventually, so that way you can manage and purchase like you do in Microsoft Flight Sim. You'll be able to do an X-Plane in the future, X-Plane 12. These are all improvements coming to make the quality of life easier for people to use X-Plane 12. Currently, for me, I would recommend X-Plane 12 if you are a flight school or flying club and you're really trying to fine-tune on, say, instrument or commercial procedures. If you're doing VFR flying or VFR training, the Microsoft Flight Sims are going to be your primary goal right now, or your primary way to go, because out of the box, as long as you have the internet connection, they are going to be the easiest to work with. But if you have the time and you're willing to do the legwork, you can bring in photoreal scenery to X-Plane 12. It's just going to take you some time to do it, code it, and implement it into the sim. Usually it's taking the raw data and getting it created in the way, or transferring into the data you want for X-Plane 12 to read it. It takes time, but it is something you can do. And if you're looking for photoreal scenery, it can either be bought or created by you for X-Plane 12. As far as anything else to talk about for X-Plane 12, we've covered the store. The betas are coming. If you want to download and try the betas, you need to do the online update portal, and that's in the installer of X-Plane 12. If you guys have questions how to do that, ask me in the comments section. I'll make a quick video of how easy that is to do. Just ask and I'll put that up there. And overall, if you want to try those, it's easy. Just do it from the installer. But if you also want to revert, you can revert back to the latest non-beta version through the same basic method. Other improvements, they are improving the water. There were some issues with shadow and water and where a float plane would sit on the water. Those are supposed to be improved, if not already fixed. And icing is being fixed as well. If you want to look at the dev blog, again, I said it's in the comments section. But if you are somebody that does not have good internet and you need something that can run without the internet, or you have really interesting or low data caps, X-Plane 12 is going to be for you. So all that being said, I think if you've watched to this point, you know where to go. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the comments section below. That is it for the state of flight simulation video. Now, videos that I'm working on to be following on after this, I'm working on the thin client video to break down certain ISPs' expectations with your internet service provider and what to expect depending on what you're doing in the flight sim and how that will affect your usage and bandwidth usage. Basically, think about your altitude and turn it upside down. The lower you are to the ground, the more bandwidth you're going to need. The higher up you are in the sky, the less bandwidth you're going to need. So just think about it as a V. Your V is inverse of your altitude for your bandwidth needs. After that, I will be talking about and finishing up. I'm working on something new for the VKB NXT Space Sim Grip joystick that I have. And I hope to have that video done real soon. We have moved. I also went to Recurrent recently, and all my stuff has always been set up in a basement workroom or a basement office. And unfortunately, we have a rodent infestation problem in our basement, and I am not going down there until we really get all that fixed. So that has put a real slowdown on all these videos. Some of the videos will be shot in different locations as I have time and the ability. So the VKB NXT Space Sim Grip video is coming. It's almost ready. I was trying a few new things out. Following that video, I do finally have an early production unit of the Charlie rudder pedals. There are some differences I've been told between this early production unit and what's being sold right now. However, I've been told there shouldn't be anything major, so my review should be able to encompass all the versions that are out there, especially with whatever's been going on at Honeycomb and however Honeycomb is moving forward. I also will have a review talking about the flap kit from Honeycomb for the Bravo throttle quadrant. After that, there are a lot of other things planned, another sim fight videos coming, but those are further off into the future. There will also be, very soon, a new flight sim peripheral buying guide coming up. I already have a lot of data compiled for that. I'm hoping to get that done probably before the product reviews, but after the thin client review is finished as well. So look for that in the next week and a half. And if you guys have any videos that you'd like to see me do, or questions or videos to break down a few other things, put them in the comment section below. Biggest thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing if you subscribe. I do this because I like it, and I want to help people find their way in aviation or flight simulation. So with all that being said, thank you again. Stay safe, stay healthy out there, and see you again real soon. Bye-bye.